when it comes to Rob Font, he's a very accurate puncher, but he's not quite as primed as Aldo is. He's not quite as snappy and as fast and as springy as Aldo is. Rob Font tends to kind of walk himself into range a little bit, and that puts his lead leg at a lot of risk. Now, as we know from Aldo, he's got great Muay Thai. If we reflect on the Marlon Vera fight for a moment, Marlon Vera was switching stance. When he was southpaw, Aldo was digging that lead hook into the body, and it was affecting Marlon. And then he would switch to orthodox, and Aldo would land that beautiful chop low kick that we saw him completely decimate Uriah Faber with. That's a main concern for me with Rob Font, because his striking style means that he has to walk himself into range. Now, we saw one of his teammates, Calvin Kattar, fall a little bit short against Max Holloway, doing something similar where he didn't have any other option other than to kind of walk his way into range, and he was getting peppered on the way in. We could see a similar thing in this fight with Jose Aldo if he's got the gas tank to do it, or if he's able to get him out of there within the first sort of 15 minutes. But if Rob Font starts to work his way inside, if he's able to tie Aldo up and slow him down and force him to wrestle, that's when we might start to see cracks in Aldo's conditioning. And that's where Rob Font starts to come on strong, because those New England boys they're not messing around. You can just see it in the way that they spar. You know, they clearly do a lot of boxing sparring. They go into deep rounds, they work each other, but they look after one another. They know how to dig, they know how to push, they know how to stand in the pocket and keep themselves safe and land sharp, accurate shots. And I think the longer this fight goes, the more it starts to lean in Rob Font's favor. If we look at certain times when Rob Font's really looked impressive, it's against the likes of Thomas Almeida, a great Muay Thai fighter, or against Marlon Moraes, another great Muay Thai fighter. You know, people that were comfortable with him standing in the range that he wants to stand and trading with him. The difference between those two fights I just mentioned, Moraes and Almeida, is that they don't move quite as much as Aldo either, and they don't have the same kind of championship awareness that Aldo has. Like, if Aldo feels like he's at risk, he just won't be in range, and he'll keep moving himself out of range and jabbing and stifling your attack and doing just enough to hold you off. Whereas other guys, they don't mind getting drawn in and scrapping with him sometimes, and that's where Rob Font really thrives. You know, he's got a wicked uppercut, he's got a wicked right hand, and it sets people up for head kicks, knowing full well that people are going to slip and expect him just to come with hands, and he catches them with kicks as well. But clinching and tying Aldo up, making him work, making him defend takedowns, making him work himself off the fence, even if it's not particularly successful, what Rob Font's doing, it's a depletion of the energy system that Aldo's got. So when later rounds arrive and Aldo's now not able to hold him off with a jab, or when he throws that low kick, it's not quite as fast, or it's a bit more predictable, and Rob Font can start catching him with counters. I really think an investment in the gas tank is the right way to go for Rob Font. And one thing that I think will be a confidence booster for him is his performance against Cody Garbrandt. He could almost replicate that against Jose Aldo, because, you know, I mean, he was taken down in that fight. It didn't all go his way, but his conditioning showed through. He started to push forward towards the end, and because Cody Garbrandt has got a finite gas tank because he throws with such power, Rob Font was able to work it into his game. He was able to push him over 5 rounds and really put a beating on him. And I mean, that is Rob Font's first 5-round fight. It was a decision. It was consistent all the way through the fight. He never really slowed down. There was never a point where I thought to myself, okay, this is the point where Cody's going to start pushing back in. Like, he's either struggling but consistent with his conditioning, or he's pushed through that stage where you start to struggle with your conditioning, and then his hands start to show. This is really a battle of those last 2 rounds for me. It's whether Jose Aldo can do enough in the first 3 rounds, either stopping him or damaging him enough to make it so he can take a round or 2 off. Whether he chooses to do that second, third, fourth round, I don't know. But one thing I am certain of is that within the 25 minutes, there will be a 5-minute gap where Aldo's going to need to rest, and that's where Rob Font can start to put it on him. And I think the more he sacrifices himself a little bit in the first 2 rounds and works and fails takedowns and, you know, gets caught with a few shots and makes Aldo work unnecessarily, fights out of a good defense, and maybe doesn't take such a beating on that lead leg, then I think that this could be a really good night for Rob Font. He's certainly on the rise. He's ranked number 4 at the moment. 19-4 is his record. 8 knockouts on his record. 4 submissions. Two guillotines, a Darson, and an armbar. Compared to Aldo, who's 30-7 with 17 knockouts and 1 submission to soccer kick. So I don't think we can count that. That's technically a TKO, I think. Rob Font's striking is very slick. It's not nearly as sharp or as snappy as Jose Aldo's, but that means that it lasts much, much longer. Like there's a cost to the way that Aldo throws his strikes, to being as explosive and as muscular and as lean as he is. Like Rob Font kind of walking himself into range and not springing into range and using that additional energy, although it makes that lead leg a little bit vulnerable to that chopping kick of Aldo. It does allow him to kind of stay relaxed as he's moving into range, so he's not expending any unnecessary energy. Because if Rob Font starts to push him into the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, we might see Aldo start to crack under that pressure, and that's where the sharp hands of Rob Font start finding the chin, and we know he can put people away when he lands. I think this is really going to be a battle of conditioning, in my opinion, and Aldo's got to be technical in the early rounds and not give too much away.